Hello, my name is Marcus and I'm 28 years old. Today I sit in a small coffee shop in downtown Phoenix, Arizona, watching the desert sun cast long shadows across the street. The smell of roasted beans mingles with the dry desert air, and for the first time in years, I feel at peace. But to tell you this story, I have to take you back to a different time. A different version of myself, one that everyone, including my own family, had written off as a failure. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I wasn't born into wealth or privilege. My childhood was spent in Sunset Hills, a working-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Phoenix, where tract homes lined dusty streets and dreams felt as distant as the mountains on the horizon. My father, Robert Chen, worked double shifts at a manufacturing plant, coming home with calloused hands and the weight of responsibility etched into his face. My mother, Sarah, cleaned office buildings downtown, leaving before dawn and returning. After dark, we weren't poor, but we weren't comfortable either. Every dollar was counted, every expense weighed. But my parents had one unwavering belief. Education was the way out. Study hard, Marcus, my father would say, his accent still thick despite 30 years in America. College is your ticket to a better life. For years, I tried to live up to that expectation. I was a decent student through elementary and middle school. Not brilliant, but consistent. My parents beamed when I brought home B's and celebrated like I'd won the lottery. When I occasionally earned an A. They had already started a small college fund, sacrificing their own needs to ensure I could have opportunities they never had. But high school changed everything. The coursework became overwhelming, the social dynamics cruel. I struggled with math and science, subjects that seemed to come naturally to my classmates. While other kids talked about SAT prep and college visits, I found myself falling further behind. The pressure mounted like a weight on my chest. It's making it hard to breathe. By my junior year, I was barely maintaining a C average. My parents' disappointed looks became more frequent. The college fund they'd mentioned so proudly began to feel like a monument to my failure. That's when I made the decision that would define the next decade of my life. I dropped out. I told my parents. My father didn't speak to me for a week. My mother cried. "What will we tell the family?" she whispered, as if my failure was a reflection of theirs. In our tight-knit extended family, education was everything. My cousins were honor students, scholarship recipients, future doctors, and lawyers. And then there was me, the dropout. After leaving school, I drifted from job to job. I worked at a gas station, pumping fuel for customers who looked through me like I was invisible. I stocked shelves at a grocery store, watching my former classmates walk by in their college sweatshirts during winter break. Each encounter was a reminder of the path I'd abandoned. My extended family made sure I never forgot my status. At gatherings, my Uncle Vincent would introduce his son Tyler, my cousin, as our future engineer. While barely acknowledging my presence, Tyler was everything I wasn't. Valedictorian, full scholarship to Arizona State University president. Of 3 different clubs, was the golden child, and I was the cautionary tale. The worst part wasn't the judgment from my aunts and uncles. It was watching my parents shrink with embarrassment whenever family topics turned to achievements and futures. They'd change the subject when Tyler's latest accomplishments were discussed, their eyes avoiding mine across the dinner table. Years passed in this haze of disappointment. I moved out of my parents' house at 21, renting a studio apartment in a rundown complex where the air conditioning barely worked and the walls were paper thin. I bounced between retail jobs, restaurant gigs, and warehouse work. Nothing stuck. I wasn't building a career. I was just surviving. By my mid-20s, I'd become the family ghost, still invited to gatherings out of obligation, but treated like a reminder of what could go wrong when someone gave up on their dreams. I started declining invitations, preferring the isolation of my apartment to the suffocating atmosphere of family judgment. But Tyler's 25th birthday party, that was different. Rebecca had made it clear this wasn't just a birthday celebration. It was Tyler's send-off party before he started his new job at a prestigious engineering firm in California. The entire family would be there, and despite my reservations, something compelled me to attend. Maybe it was masochism, or maybe some small part of me still hoped for acceptance. The party was held at my Uncle Vincent's house in Scottsdale. Sprawling ranch-style home with a pristine pool and landscaping that probably cost more than I made in a year. Cars filled the circular driveway, BMWs, Mercedes, the kind of vehicles that screamed success. I pulled up in my beat-up Honda Civic, the engine making that rattling sound it had been making for months. Inside, the house buzzed with conversation about achievements, promotions, and future plans. Tyler stood in the center of it all wearing a crisp button-down shirt and a smile that came easily to someone who'd never known real failure. Relatives clustered around him, hanging on every word about his new position, his signing bonus, his bright future. I grabbed a beer and found a corner where I could observe without drawing attention. That strategy worked for about an hour until my cousin Jessica spotted me. "Marcus, oh my God, I haven't seen you in forever." Her voice carried across the room, and suddenly all eyes were on me. "What are you up to these days?" she asked, her smile bright but her eyes already calculating my worth based on my discount store clothes and worn sneakers. "Just working," I mumbled, hoping the conversation would end there. But Uncle Vincent materialized beside us, his face already flushed from his third whiskey. "Working where, Marcus? Still jumping between minimum wage jobs?" The room's energy shifted. Conversation slowed as relatives tuned in to what was clearly going to be uncomfortable. Tyler glanced over, his expression a mixture of pity and embarrassment. "At a warehouse downtown," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's honest work." Vincent laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Honest work? Marcus, you're 28 years old. Tyler just graduated with honors and landed a six-figure job. Your cousin Jenny just finished medical school. Even little Tommy over there is starting high school with a 4.0 GPA. He gestured around the room like he was presenting evidence in a courtroom. "And what do you have to show for your life? A warehouse job and a car that sounds like it's about to die in our driveway." The room fell silent, except for the distant sound of kids playing in the pool. I felt my face burning, my hands trembling slightly as I gripped my beer bottle. "At least I'm working," I managed to say. "Working?" Vincent's voice rose. "You dropped out of high school, Marcus. You gave up on every opportunity your parents sacrificed to give you. You're not working toward anything, you're just ... existing. You're a worthless dropout. Who's been coasting through life while everyone else builds something meaningful?" Those words, worthless dropout, hit me like a physical blow. I saw my parents across the room, their faces a mixture of shame and sadness. Tyler looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. The rest of the family stood frozen, some nodding slightly in agreement with Vincent's assessment. "You know what the saddest part is?" Vincent continued, his voice carrying a cruel satisfaction. "Your parents still make excuses for you. They still hope you'll figure it out. But we all know the truth. Some people are just meant to be failures." I wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor, and never face these people again. I was about to mumble an excuse and leave when the doorbell rang. Aunt Rebecca hurried to answer the door, probably expecting a late-arriving relative. But when she opened it, her expression changed to confusion, then surprise. "I'm looking for Marcus Chen," came a voice from the entryway, deep, authoritative, unfamiliar. The room's attention shifted from my humiliation to this mysterious visitor. I heard footsteps, confident and measured, moving toward the living room. When the man appeared, the entire atmosphere changed. He was tall, probably in his early 50s, with silver gray hair cropped short and posture that screamed military. Bearing, he wore a crisp dress uniform I didn't immediately recognize, with ribbons and insignia that spoke of serious rank and achievement. But it was his eyes that commanded attention, sharp, intelligent, missing nothing. "Marcus Chen?" he asked, scanning the room until his gaze landed on me. I nodded, unable to find my voice. Every eye in the room was fixed on this stranger who'd just walked into our family gathering like he belonged there. "I'm General William Thompson, United States Army," he said, extending his hand. "I've been looking for you." The silence was deafening. Uncle Vincent's mouth hung open. Tyler stared like he was witnessing something impossible. My parents looked confused and worried. I think there's been a mistake, I stammered. I don't know why you'd be looking for me. Smiled, and there was something knowing in his expression. No mistake, son. I've been tracking down everyone involved in Operation Silent Shield. It's taken us 3 years to locate all the participants. Operation what? I asked, my mind reeling. Perhaps we should speak privately, the general said. Glancing around the room at my gaping relatives,
How, said Vincent,
finding his voice. If this is some kind of joke or mistake, we might as well clear it up here. Marcus isn't involved in any military operations. He's a high school dropout who works in a warehouse. General Thompson's expression hardened as he looked at Vincent. Sir, I'd recommend you listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Turn back to me. Marcus, do you remember the summer when you were 17? Before your senior year? A chill ran down my spine. That summer was a blur of depression and confusion, the months before I made the decision to drop out. But there was something else, something I'd buried so deep, I'd almost convinced myself it was a dream. The computer program? I whispered. General Thompson nodded. That's right, tell me what you remember. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The summer I was 17, struggling with the realization that I was failing academically. I'd spent most of my time locked in my bedroom playing video games and browsing the internet. It was during one of those endless online sessions that I stumbled across something that would change everything. I was exploring forums and chat rooms, looking for anything to distract me from my academic anxiety. When I discovered a discussion about cybersecurity, someone had posted about vulnerabilities in government systems, not to exploit them, but to understand how security worked. I became fascinated. For weeks, I dove deep into learning about network security, encryption, and system vulnerabilities. It wasn't like school subjects that felt abstract and pointless. This was like solving puzzles. I discovered I had an intuitive understanding of how systems worked and where their weaknesses might lie. Late one night, while exploring a practice network set up for security training, I found something that shouldn't have been there, a backdoor, a hidden entry point that bypassed all the normal security measures. It was sophisticated, nearly invisible, but I could see it. Instead of ignoring it or using it maliciously, I documented everything. I found and sent a detailed report to what I thought was a cybersecurity education website. I included the vulnerability details, how I'd found it, recommendations for fixing it. I never heard back. And within a few days, the practice network was completely restructured. I assumed my report had been ignored or dismissed as the work of some amateur teenager. I forgot about it, buried under the weight of my deteriorating school performance and the decision to drop out. You didn't send that report to an education website, Marcus, General Thompson said, his voice carrying a gravity that made the room feel smaller. You sent it directly to the Pentagon's Cybersecurity Division. The room gasped collectively. I felt the blood drain from my face. The backdoor you discovered, the general continued, was a sophisticated piece of foreign infiltration software that had been embedded in our systems for over 2 years. Our best cybersecurity experts had been searching for it for months. You found it in 3 hours. Uncle Vincent's face had gone from flushed to pale. Tyler stood frozen, his mouth slightly open. But that's not all, General Thompson said. Your recommendations for fixing the vulnerability and strengthening? The system were so advanced that our team initially thought the report came from a senior cybersecurity analyst. When we traced it back to a 17-year-old high school student in Phoenix, we thought there'd been a mistake. Your report, Marcus, didn't just help us fix a security breach. General Thompson continued, his voice cutting through the stunned silence of the room. It prevented what could have been the largest intelligence compromise in modern military history. That backdoor was being used to access classified information about troop movements, weapons systems, and strategic plans. I stood there trying to process what he was saying. The family members around me looked like they were watching a movie, unable to believe what they were hearing. We launched a full investigation based on your findings, the general said. Operation Silent Shield. It took us 2 years to trace the full network of foreign operatives who had infiltrated our systems. We prevented the theft of intelligence that could have compromised national security and put American lives at risk. But I never heard anything back, I said weakly. You ignored my report. We couldn't contact you directly, General, Thompson explained. The investigation was classified at the highest levels. Any communication might have compromised the operation or put you in danger. We had to work in complete secrecy while we dismantled the entire spy network. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. Marcus, by the authority of the President of the United States and the gratitude of the American people, you are being awarded the Defense Meritorious Service Medal for your critical contribution to national security. The folder contained an official certificate with my name and a medal in a presentation box. But more than that, it contained letters of recommendation from generals, intelligence officials, and cybersecurity experts who had worked on the operation. Additionally, General Thompson continued, the Department of Defense would like to offer you a position with our Cyber Command Division. Full security clearance, starting salary of $95,000, and the opportunity to continue the work you started when you were just a teenager. The room erupted, not in celebration, but in stunned whispers and confused murmurs. Uncle Vincent looked like he'd been slapped. Tyler stared at the medal with an expression I'd never seen before, something that might have been envy. There's one more thing, the general said. The Pentagon has also established a scholarship program for cybersecurity education. If you choose to pursue formal training while working with us, the military will pay for your education at any institution. You choose. I looked around the room at faces that had been filled with judgment and dismissal just minutes before. Now, they showed confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been shame. Vincent had retreated to the bar, pouring himself another whiskey with shaking hands. Tyler was reading over my shoulder, trying to comprehend the official documents. That proclaimed his dropout cousin a national hero? I don't understand, I said to General Thompson. If this happened when I was 17, why are you here now? Why did you wait so long? The operation only concluded 6 months ago, he explained. We've been declassifying documents and tracking down everyone who contributed to its success. You were our most important lead, but also the hardest to locate because you'd moved several times and your name wasn't in any of our official systems. We finally found you through employment records, he continued. When we discovered you were working in a warehouse, despite your obvious talents, we realized we had failed you. The very person who helped protect our nation was struggling too. Make ends meet because we couldn't acknowledge your contribution until now. My mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Marcus, is this real? Did you really do all this? I nodded, still trying to process it myself. I never knew it was important. I just saw a problem and tried to fix it. General Thompson smiled. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need in cybersecurity. The ability to see what others miss, to solve problems instinctively. You have a gift, Marcus, one that your country needs. Vincent finally found his voice, though it was much quieter than before. I had no idea. Marcus, I'm sorry for what I said. I was looking at my parents, seeing something in their faces I hadn't seen in years. Pride, not the desperate hope they'd carried when they talked about my potential, but genuine pride in something I'd actually accomplished. So what do you say, Marcus? General Thompson asked. Are you ready to stop hiding your talents and start using them to serve your country? The offer hung in the air like a lifeline I'd never expected to see. A real career, meaningful work, the respect I'd craved for so long. But looking around the room at my family's shocked faces, I realized something else was happening. This wasn't just about a job offer. It was about rewriting the entire story of who I was. I need some time to think about it, I said, though part of me wanted to accept immediately. Of course, General Thompson said, here's my direct contact information. The position will remain open for you, but I hope you won't wait too long. Your country needs people like you. After he left, the party atmosphere completely changed. The celebration of Tyler's achievements felt hollow compared to what had just transpired. Relatives who had barely acknowledged my existence for years suddenly wanted to talk to me, to understand what had happened, but the person I most needed to speak with was Uncle Vincent. I found him on the back patio, staring out at the desert landscape. "I owe you an apology," he said without turning around. "Not just for tonight, but for years of treating you like you were worthless." "You didn't know," I said, though his words still stung. "That's no excuse," Vincent replied. "I judged you based on conventional measures of success without ever asking what you were actually capable of. I turned you into the family failure story without knowing the whole story." He turned to face me, and I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. "Your parents never stopped believing in you, you know. Even when I called you a disappointment, they defended you. They said you just needed to find your path. I didn't make it easy. For them," I admitted. "Maybe not," Vincent said. "But they saw something the rest of us missed. Maybe because they loved you enough to look deeper." 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a Pentagon briefing room, wearing a security badge and learning about threats to American cybersecurity infrastructure. The transition felt surreal, from warehouse worker to federal cybersecurity analyst in less than a month. My new colleagues were brilliant, driven people who spoke in acronyms and thought in algorithms. But what surprised me most was how naturally I fit in. The skills that had been dormant for over a decade came flooding back, enhanced by years of real-world experience and problem-solving. During my first major assignment, analyzing a potential breach in military communications systems, I found myself working alongside Harvard graduates and MIT PhDs. But when I identified the source of the vulnerability, a flaw so subtle that automated systems had missed it completely, my new team looked at me with the same respect I'd always craved from my family. "How did you see that?" asked Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a cybersecurity expert with 2 decades of experience. "I don't know," I said honestly. "It just stood out, like it didn't belong." That ability to see what others missed, to intuitively understand complex systems, became my signature skill. Within 6 months, I was leading my own team and earning commendations from senior officials who had no idea. I'd once been called a worthless dropout, but the real change wasn't in my career. It was in my relationship with my family. My parents visited me in my new apartment in Arlington, Virginia, their faces beaming with a pride that had nothing to do with correcting past disappointments and everything to do with genuine amazement at who I'd become. A year after that birthday party, Tyler reached out to me. His engineering job, while successful, had become routine and unfulfilling. He was considering a career change and wanted my advice. "I used to think I had it all figured out," he told me during a video call. "Straight A's, perfect resume, everything planned out. But watching what you've accomplished, finding your own path, discovering your real talents, it's made me realize I might have been too focused on checking boxes instead of finding what I'm actually good at." It was strange being asked for advice by the cousin who had once been held up as everything I should aspire to be. But Tyler's honesty and humility reminded me that everyone struggles with finding their place in the world, even those who seem to have it all figured out. The biggest change was in how I saw myself. For years, I'd defined myself by what I wasn't. Not a graduate, not successful, not worthy of my family's pride. But the work I was doing, protecting systems that kept people safe, solving problems that had real consequences, gave me a sense of purpose I'd never experienced. I started speaking at conferences about cybersecurity, sharing insights that came from my unique perspective. I wasn't just the dropout who got lucky. I was someone who saw problems differently because I'd taken a different path. My unconventional background became an asset, not a liability. 2 years after General Thompson walked into that birthday party, I returned to Phoenix for a family gathering. But this time, I was the one being celebrated. My promotion to senior cybersecurity analyst came with recognition from the Secretary of Defense and a commendation for work on a classified operation that I couldn't discuss, but that had prevented a major attack on American infrastructure. Uncle Vincent was the first to greet me when I arrived. "Marcus," he said, shaking my hand firmly, "I've been following your career in the news. The family's very proud of you." Felt good to hear those words, but I realized they didn't carry the same desperate importance they once had. I'd found my worth through my work and my contribution, not through family validation. During dinner, As relatives shared updates about their lives and achievements, I found myself listening differently. Tyler talked about his new job at a startup, pursuing work that excited him rather than just impressed others. Jenny mentioned considering a specialty in cybersecurity law, inspired by stories about my work. Even the younger cousins asked questions about technology and problem solving. But the moment that mattered most was when my father stood up to make a toast. 10 years ago, he said, his accent still thick, but his voice strong. I thought I knew what success looked like. I thought it meant following a specific path, checking specific boxes. When Marcus chose a different path, I was disappointed. I was wrong. He looked directly at me. Marcus, you taught us that real success isn't about doing what everyone expects. It's about finding where your talents can make a difference. You protected our country when you were still a teenager, and you've continued to serve with honor. We're not just proud of what you've accomplished, we're proud of who you are. As my career progressed, I began to understand that my story wasn't unique in its broad strokes. Many people find their calling later than expected, through unconventional paths. But what made it significant was how it changed not just my life, but how my family understood success and potential. I started mentoring young people who felt like failures in traditional academic settings. Some were dropouts like I'd been. Others were struggling students who couldn't see their own talents through the fog of standardized expectations. I helped them understand that intelligence comes in many forms, and that the ability to think differently can be a superpower rather than a disability. One of my mentees, a 19-year-old named Alex who had dropped out of college after struggling with traditional computer science courses, ended up discovering a critical vulnerability in a major social media platform. The company not only fixed the flaw but offered Alex a 6-figure job. Another mentee used her unconventional thinking to develop a new approach to network security that's now being implemented across government agencies. The work gave me a sense of purpose beyond my own success. I was helping other people avoid the years of feeling worthless that I'd endured, showing them that their different way of thinking was valuable and not deficient. 5 years after that life-changing birthday party, I received a call that I never could have imagined. The President of the United States wanted to present me with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in America, recognizing not just my initial discovery, but my continued contributions to national cybersecurity. The ceremony took place in the Rose Garden, with my parents, Tyler, and even Uncle Vincent in attendance. As the president described my work protecting critical infrastructure, mentoring the next generation of cybersecurity experts, and helping to prevent multiple cyber attacks on American institutions, I caught sight of my mother wiping tears from her eyes. Marcus Chen represents the best of American ingenuity, the president said, as he placed the medal around my neck. He shows us that talent can emerge from unexpected places, and that our greatest strengths often come from our most unconventional thinkers. After the ceremony, Vincent approached me with something I'd never expected to see: humility and genuine respect. I've been thinking about that night at Tyler's party, he said. About the things I said to you. I realize now that I wasn't just wrong about you, I was wrong about what makes someone valuable. You were serving your country while I was calling you worthless. I was too blind to see it. We all see what we expect to see, I replied. I didn't know my own worth either. Maybe, Vincent said, but a good uncle should help his nephew see his potential, not tear him down. I failed you, and I'm sorry. Today, I run the Department of Defense's Youth Cybersecurity Initiative, a program designed to identify and nurture unconventional talent in technology and security. We work with schools, community centers, and even reach out to young people who have left traditional education paths. The program has identified dozens of young people with extraordinary cybersecurity instincts, kids who see patterns others miss, who think about problems in completely different ways. Some are honor students, but many are struggling in traditional academic settings. It's just like I was. Last month, a 16-year-old girl from rural Montana, who had been labeled a problem student because she questioned everything and couldn't focus on standard curricula, identified a vulnerability in election security systems that had been missed by teams of experts. She's now being fast-tracked through a specialized education program and will join our team when she turns 18. The work reminds me daily that intelligence and talent come in forms that don't fit standard molds. Some of our most successful team members are former dropouts, self-taught programmers, and people who found their calling outside traditional academic paths. But perhaps more importantly, the program has changed how we think about potential and failure. We're teaching families, educators, communities to look for different kinds of intelligence, to value problem-solving ability over test scores, and to understand that some of our most valuable contributors might not look like what we expect. As I sit here in this Phoenix coffee shop, preparing to visit my family for Tyler's wedding, I think about the journey from that humiliating birthday party to where I am now. The external changes are obvious. The career, the recognition, financial security I never thought I'd have, but the real transformation was internal. I learned that my worth isn't determined by other people's expectations or traditional measures of success. I discovered that the very traits that made me seem like a failure in high school, the tendency to question everything, see problems others missed, to think outside conventional frameworks, were actually my greatest strengths. More importantly, I learned that it's never too late to discover who you really are. For over a decade, I accepted the label of worthless dropout and built my identity around it. But that label was just other people's limited understanding of my potential, not a reflection of my actual worth. The lesson isn't that everyone who struggles in school is secretly a genius. That would be another kind of fairy tale. The lesson is that human potential is complex and multifaceted, and that our society's narrow definitions of success can blind us to the talents that are all around us. Today, when I speak to young people who feel like failures, I tell them what I wish someone had told me at 17. Your current circumstances don't define your potential, the path that others expect. You to follow might not be the one where you'll find your greatest contributions. And sometimes, the very things that make you feel different or deficient are actually your superpowers. You just need to find the right context to use them. I think about Uncle Vincent's words that night. Worthless dropout, and I realize they were never really about me. They were about his limited understanding of what value looks like. He saw someone who didn't fit the mold and assumed the person was broken rather than questioning whether the mold itself might be incomplete. But I also think about General Thompson walking into that party, carrying news that would change everything. He represents something important. Recognition that talent comes in unexpected packages, and that our institutions need to be better at finding and nurturing unconventional abilities. As I prepare to head to the wedding, where I'll see Tyler exchange vows with his fiancée and start the next chapter of his life, I'm struck by how different our paths have been. He followed the conventional route and found success and happiness. I took the scenic route through failure and disappointment before finding my calling. Both paths are valid. It's both led to meaningful lives. The real victory isn't that I proved Uncle Vincent wrong, or that I achieved recognition and success. The real victory is that I learned to see myself clearly, not as the failure others labeled me, but not as a hidden genius either, just as someone with unique talents who needed the right opportunity to shine. And if my story can help even one person realize their apparent failures might actually be preparation for their greatest successes, then every moment of that humiliation at Tyler's birthday party was worth it. Because sometimes, the general walking through the door isn't there to rescue you. He's there to help you realize you were never worthless in the first place. You were just waiting for the right moment to discover what you were truly capable of. The boy who was called a burden became the man who helps protect his country. The dropout became the mentor who helps others find their path. The worthless failure became someone who understands that worth isn't determined by other people's limited vision of what success should look like. That's not just my story. It's a reminder that all of our stories are still being written. The next chapter might be the one that changes everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.